Haha, gotcha. Yeah, I bet you were expecting some women hate in this video, right? Well, let me first introduce myself. My name is Matthew Carnegie, and I say, keep the faith. Now, this was I don't know if it was TikTok or YouTube short, some shit that I saw while I was scrolling, but it was basically one guy asking another guy, what's the number one thing you hate about women? And, when you see something like that, it should just make you sad. It makes me very sad. Honestly, it's hard not to despair, frankly, when you see something like that, because it just shows how deep and hurtful the divide has gotten between men and women, or just between people and people. And I mean, I thought a lot about what I would say if I were to be asked that question. And I've had a lot of really negative experiences with women, and I've also done a lot of negative things to women. So, you know, uh, not that anyone's keeping score necessarily, but let's say I have a lot of trauma around women, and so you hear a question like that, and the first thing you think is, well, everything, or something along those lines. Something that's really gonna cut them deep, really gonna show that you got them, or like, I hate their hair, or their nose rings, or their entitlement, or their attitude, or their lack of accountability, or you just rattle off you know problems that you've had, the problems that I personally had, my personal experiences with women. But the first thing that you kind of realize is that, well, a lot of the issues that I suppose you could lay at the feet of women to say, like, here's where women are messing up. Here's what's worth hating on them. A lot of that they tend to be pretty general, and they could just be applied to people, men and women. You know, there are men that are not accountable. There are men that have terrible attitudes. There are men that listen exclusively to their emotions in the moment, that are selfish, that are inconsiderate, uh, hurtful, manipulative, hateful, the whole thing. And so, it would be hard, I think, to figure out the quality specific to women that would be, like, worth hating. That's like, aha, we've got it. I mean, hell, we live in a society right now where it's just, you know, what is a woman? There was a whole info. I forgot, there was Matt Walsh, I think, did that. I didn't watch it, but I suppose the idea that we're asking that is pretty funny. Because it's a question that men have been asking for years. Women, they already know because they have the experience. And I suppose if you were to ask a woman, all she would she'd probably just get annoyed. She'd be like, "You mean you don't? I am." And that's a really good response. Is, what is a woman? That is right there, or I am, or that sort of thing. At least in my opinion. I don't want to get into any sort of political gobbledygook. I'm not interested. Uh, and so finding a quality that would be specific to women would be very, very difficult. And I think actually more important, that I wanted to start with this originally, because this is much more important. It's not good to hate, really, in anything, and for everything. It's not good to hate. I think probably the only thing you could hate with full abashedness, without any reservation, or without any recontextualization, would be sin. But that's not a person. That's more like an action. That's more like, I hate that there's a negative force that's making my life more terrible. And even then, you want to really, really be careful on doing that, because you never know when, just like with Joseph, a sin of his brothers selling him into slavery. I mean, that you could hate that, right? That's pretty darn bad, having your brothers selling you into slavery. But then, of course, God comes in and He uses that in order to change that original sin into actually good for the Israelites. So it's really hate itself. It's not a good emotion to ever be tapped into, because it's an emotion of destruction. It's an emotion of immediacy. It's an emotion that envelops and overwhelms and takes away subtlety and rationality, and it overpowers the other emotions as well. You can't really be kind and hate at the same time. They tend to be exclusive. So, hating women, even though, and I'm no saint, I have hate women. And if I were to say I don't hate women anymore, maybe I could say if I really concentrate really, really hard and like really, really try, I don't hate women. But if I were to leave my mind wandering and let my unconscious mind come up, well then yeah, I mean, thoughts deriding women would arise. Thoughts about how much I hate women would arise. And I've talked about this in previous video about the subconscious. Is based on the experiences that I had, I was victimized by women. I was traumatized very, very badly by women. And so as a survival mechanism, my subconscious started to breed the beliefs that women are evil, women are dangerous, women are out to get me, women are liars, can't be trusted, and you shouldn't treat them with kindness or respect, or you shouldn't be vulnerable with them, you shouldn't be honest with them. All of these cognitive distortions that I was believing because it was a coping mechanism for how deeply I had been victimized. And we're living in a very sick society right now, unfortunately. Oh well. If only these times weren't ours, right? But they are. So and maybe we get to hate that, or maybe we get to accept that as some that there's some good that'll come of it, as in this crucible, in this furnace, we will become the men that we could be, and not the men that we would have been. I don't know. I hope that sounds poetic. But we live in a sick society, and lots of people are deeply hurt, deeply traumatized. It's the the biggest problem with hating women is that you can't really, you can only do it in a vacuum. That if you really look at the woman, and you look at her life and the things that she's experienced, the things that she's gone through, it's really, really likely that she's experienced some sort of trauma. She's been let down. If she hasn't done that, she's at least been brainwashed, by media or by other bad actors, by demonic forces that just want to bring her into a quick and easy escape, but that will ultimately lead to her downfall. And maybe she doesn't have anybody in her life. Maybe she's fatherless. It's a hell of an accusation against women, if you really think about it, to say, this woman is fatherless, because that's awful. I mean, that's really terrible. Not necessarily the accusation, because it's accurate, but the realization that, oh my gosh, this woman grew up without a father. This woman's father abandoned her, and so the one single person in her life that was supposed to teach her about positive masculinity, that had the responsibility, the charge to bring her up in a safe environment and fill her with feelings of safety and security and the ability to be feminine and express themselves fully and make mistakes and not be you know pressed by them. That's a Crucible reference. He abandoned her. And so she didn't get that, she didn't get that feeling of safety and security growing up. She didn't get that view of like, oh, this is actually what men could be. All she found was like, oh my gosh, here's the one, the original marker for how men are supposed to be is abandoned her. So okay, well, men abandoned. They're crooks. They don't take responsibility. They don't care about me. We wonder why they get this opinion. I mean, it's right there. The writing's on the wall, and so it's just sad. And so yes, this sick society breeds sick women, and sick women, are hurt people. Unfortunately, for anyone who has been hurt or victimized because of their ignorance or naivete. That was part of it for me. I mean, it always is part of it, and part of it I was complicit in it because, of my own personal ignorance, of my own personal shortcomings, of my own personal, let's say, invitations into sin into my house. And so, for those women, it is important to be vigilant and to be, logically cautious. You don't want to go up to a lion and try to give it a hug. The same way you don't want to go up to a witchy woman and tell her your feelings. And that's not a condemnation on women. That's just unfortunately the sick society that we live in. We need to be more guarded. We need to be more cautious. We need to be more judicious about who we share things with and the way that we expose ourselves, because there's a lot of pathogens flying around, literally, metaphorically, and spiritually. And so, hearing that question, it's just a sad question from a sad and sick society. And so I thought a lot on how I would respond, and I guess it would be, first of all, I don't think it's good to hate. I don't think it's good to dwell in a destructive headspace. I don't think that that's worthwhile. And I don't think a lot of the things that I could say that would condemn women, the sort of stereotypes of why women are awful, I also don't know how I could prescribe that specifically to women. And so how I would answer that question, I think it would be, what's the worst part about women these days? And even that seems odd, to make such a broad generalization, because I haven't met 10,000 women. I've probably met 1,000 over the course of, I don't know, hundreds at the very least, and they're very, very different from each other. Many types, many different walks of life, many different cultures, many different perspectives, and a good portion of them tend to be pretty similar. Just like everything, there are standard deviations, distributions, and so you're going to get the same type of women every once in a while, but for the most part, lots of them are very different. So making such a generalization feels odd, but I do feel like you can still do it with some validity. So I would say, what's the worst part about women? Here's the answer. I would say it's they have forgotten who they are. And I think, that goes with men too, but men have forgotten who they are in a different way that women have forgotten who they are. And it's, I'd like to leave it there, because that sounds very poetic, right? It sounds like, aha, got it. But of course, what does that mean? Who are women? What is a woman? And I think it's something like that. Women are really the reason that we're here. And that has so many layers to it. Obviously, number one, if we didn't have any women, there wouldn't be people. There'd be no human race. All the women disappeared tomorrow. If men really went their own way, you hear that movement, men go their own way, and God bless them, because you. I mean, if you want to understand, if it ever that seems silly or ridiculous to you, that movement, all you got to do is just listen to their stories for like 5-10 minutes, and it will devastate you to the core. And I'd really like them to be a part of that movement rather than killing themselves. Which I mean, if you imagine yourself going through the same circumstances and you don't think about killing yourself, well, then you're either built different or you're inhuman, frankly. And so yeah, they've got it. But if men really, all the men really decided to tap into that energy and go with that movement, I mean, 80 years we're gone. Everyone's gone. Because there are no more births. So that's a big deal. That we wouldn't be here. And again, you could say, well, if all the men disappeared, and the women would disappear. Well, yeah, obviously, as well. But also number two is that there's that famous quote: "Men go to war because women are watching." A lot of what everyone does is for women, and and it's not for like this idea of like we're seeking approval or we're seeking validation. We don't want like a trophy wife. We don't want just the validation from sex. A lot do, and I wish them well. God bless them. I hope. What is it? I hope they have a nice day, and I hope their lifestyle doesn't come to bite them back in the ass. But I think, again, I can speak for myself, and I'd like to think that I'm on a journey of trying to remember and reclaim what positive masculinity really is, especially after a good portion of my life chasing a illusion of positive masculinity. Just playboy, bad boy, disrespectful, mean, all that stuff. And there's a place for that. There's an integration for that. But the problem with those archetypes is that they are still only halves to a coin. You want the bad boy and the nice guy fused together. That's a man. Because the nice guy, obviously he's a people pleaser. He gets walked all over. Nice guys finish last. That's true. Bad news. Sorry. And then the bad boy, he might get a lot of attention. He might get a lot of sex. He might get a lot of crazy relationships, crazy stories, whatever. But his lifestyle, it's life in the fast lane. It surely makes you lose your mind. It's non-tenable, and so you want to combine those two sides of yourself. The people pleaser side and the shadow self. Essentially, you combine those two. And so while I'm a very strong proponent that nice guys finish last, kind guys finish first. And I really believe that, and I believe that distinction is important. And the distinction is somewhere like a nice guy is a people pleaser. He does things for validation and attention, and a kind person does things and makes decisions based from some inner moral integration and integrity. Integration and integrity. Who has, through experience, been able to, of his own accord, decide what really is valuable and what is right and wrong. Obviously within reason, because you could always, there's always exceptions to the rule, but of course I have a great mentor who said the exception proves the rule. Okay, so where was I? So yeah, so we exist. Men want to do things and want to live and want to grow and want to compete for women. Again, not for the validation, but because they want that companionship. They want that partnership. They want that marriage, you know? And I don't mean marriage in the fucking legalistic, nonsense sort of lawyer law sort of way. I think that that's nonsense. I mean real marriage. I mean the type of bonding in which you become inseparable. The two souls become one soul. This act of completion, this management of purpose. Because if you think about it, you can work really hard and obtain resources and be very attractive and have power and everything. But what for? Is it because if you don't have a woman to share these moments with, and again, it's more than just sex. It's more than just buying her things. It's more than providing. It's saying that here is another human being that I would love to make their life worth living. Because a lot of times it feels like life is not worth living. It feels like this is a curse. I mean, we're here to suffer. Bad things happen to us for meaningless reasons. And yet, sometimes it's like, well, hey, this is really weird. All of a sudden, life seems amazing. Life seems this brilliant, wonderful gift that we've been given. It's chock full of meaning, and again, the oddest thing, this is from the Brothers Karamazov. It's one of my favorite parts. I don't actually. I hate I hate the part, but it stuck with me because I hate it so much because it's so powerful, so revealing. Is Ivan Karamazov? He makes gosh, what it was. It's like he makes some deal with the devil or something like that. But he is tasked to walk a billion steps in abject darkness, but he's in like the other world, some separate life. He's a spirit, so it's not like he's gonna get tired or whatever. That'd be pretty funny. Walk a billion steps. It's like, well, is there going to be a Steak and Shake nearby? Am I going to get a break to eat? Like, that seems a long. How am I going to keep? Do you have some electrolytes? But so he walks a billion steps in abject total darkness, and you can imagine that if you were in abject total darkness, complete sensory deprivation, it could be pretty painful. Especially if you haven't like self-actualized or made peace with yourself. Kind of that's not a life. Is nothing happening ever. But so he walks a billion steps in abject darkness, and then the promise is that at the end he gets 2 seconds of heaven. And you'd think, well, hey, that sounds like a pretty bad deal. A billion steps in abject darkness, or for 2 seconds of heaven. Like, that fucking guy from Pawn Stars, did he sell this to you or whatever? But he doesn't have anything better to do, being in abject darkness, so he starts walking along. And finally, after some unspecific time, who knows how long it would take, he gets to the 2 seconds of heaven, and he goes, my goodness, this was so worth it. And I hate that because I don't want it to be worth it. I want equal, fair compensation, from my perspective. Who knows what equal, fair compensation is, Who I imagine even a nanosecond of heaven is invaluable. Can't be priced, can't be bargained with or for. But so that happens, is you're gonna go along in your life and you say, this is miserable, I hate this sucks, and all of a sudden some experience is gonna happen and it's gonna be like, oh my gosh, you know what, this makes it all worth it. All that suffering that I went through, that's great. I'm okay with that. And so in life, you can work to make it so someone else has that experience more and more often, more and more consistently. And there's, I mean, it's great to feel that way. Obviously, it's amazing to feel that way. But actually, it's better. I guess it's like a higher heaven, maybe. So maybe it's again a selfish act because it's like I'm gonna feel even better to make that other person feel like they're in heaven. And you know, you can do that with guys. You can do it with your friends, and I guess maybe homosexuals do that too. I don't really want to knock homosexuals. I'm not one, so I guess I can't relate. And most people. Well, I don't know. Again, I don't want to make generalizations, but I'd say the majority is still heterosexual. Still want that with a woman, and so. Um, and so we'll just we'll acknowledge that as again exception to the rule, but doesn't disprove it, and just leave that over there. But if you don't have someone else in your life to do that or share that with or share that for, well then all you can really be is something like a sage or a monk or a teacher or a stepping stone for someone else. And I really mean this. What ends up happening is that you'll get older and you'll see, aha, here's someone younger than I. Here's the key. Sorry, sorry, it takes me a second to really get at to what I need to say. Is that as a man, we want to be able to give that to others. We don't necessarily want to be given to that. And what makes women wonderful, and this is again my opinion, my experience, my factually based opinion that everyone knows is right, is men want to give that away. They don't want to be given to. But women want to be given to. They really like it. They really like being given things. And they don't really so much like getting things themselves necessarily all the time. And again, there's a lot of discrepancy and subtlety and grayness here, but that's irrelevant because we're talking about the generality. Women like to be given, men like to give. And so if you're going to be a man, you're going to find out that the only person you can give to other than a woman is someone like a younger, less powerful, more inexperienced man or boy. And so, there's meaning and validity and good experience in that. But the problem is that boy, that child is not your equal. You're always giving like a charity, to someone who, can't quite do it on their own yet. And so it's, it's still very generous, but it's not the same type of generosity, because when it comes to the woman is your equal. The woman is your opposite. The woman is the other half of your soul. And so you're not giving because they can't do it themselves. You're not giving because they're too inexperienced to get what you've got, or not powerful enough, or not intelligent enough, or doesn't work hard, whatever. They have all those things, and so you can give it to them anyway, and enrich their life anyway, and that. I mean, there's not really anything better than that. At least as far as I can tell. I mean, I don't think you can believe that there's anything better than that without being extremely jaded, extremely bitter, and cynical. I don't believe that you can't. I really believe that there's really nothing better than that. And I mean, I've had nothing but failed relationships, really toxic, terrible relationships that both my partner and I were, the cause of. But even in terrible relationships, you still get to glance that, maybe at least just for a moment, and you say, oh, actually, this is what our relationship could be, and this is a really wonderful thing, is us giving ourselves to each other. And that's obviously the other thing about it, is that women get to give something to men, that you know they can't give themselves, which is something like a feeling that they're okay. No, that's not it. No, that's it's a feeling that, because men can do that for themselves, and they should do that for themselves. It's that they can give them a feeling that, it's hard, because I've never been married. I'm still practically, for all intents and purposes, a kid. I don't know why I'm talking about this such high level stuff that I have no experience with. But so I'm gonna reach right out on a ledge here and really do my best to just give my best educated, ignorant guess. It's something like they make men feel like it's all worth it, because all their hard work and everything, for they had a reason to do it. They is that was so that they could give it um, to their wife, and again, not law wife. I mean, spiritual wife, uh, other half of their soul partner. And without women, you don't get to do that, really. Uh, huh. Well, um, sometimes when you're talking, I think, draw a blank and run out of things to say, and so I think that's where I'm at right now, and so I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Well, I hope very much that you enjoyed my meditations. Um, I am speaking now, from my own personal experience, for my own personal benefit, of course, because it's nice to be able to express myself. But I also do this in the hopes that someone who is on a journey similar to mine, or maybe on a tangential or adjacent journey, um, might hear what I say and glean some wisdom from it, and hopefully what I say can uh, be a comfort or an inspiration that can help salve your own personal victimization, or perhaps even better, prevent resentment or anger or bitterness and the desire to victimize others in the future. Because I know personally that my personal victimization has made me want to victimize others, because that's the cycle of trauma, that's the cycle of violence. And I work so hard every day to not be a part of that circle of violence, and I believe that that is worth doing and possible, and I believe that I can be an example of that, and I believe that if you're struggling with that, you absolutely can do it too, and I hope that you do. Okay, that's a good place to end it. Well, thank you for listening. As always, my name is Matthew Carnegie, and I say, keep the faith.